What is up, folks? We are doing something a little different here. By the time you're watching this, I've already been gone on the road for almost a week. I got hired as a camera operator on a documentary that's being executive produced by Gary Sinise and sponsored by Canon. So we're shooting on two Canon C500 Mark IIs. As you can see, here's my AKS kit that I'm bringing with me. Even though I'm using their Canon C500s, I like to have my own little kit. So I have my follow focus in there. Underneath there is my entire shoulder rig kit with top handle. I have some cleaning supplies for electronics, you know, Pancro and Kimtech wipes. This is my video assist. I have my little baby Pavo Light RGB tubes, and in that little black thing is my GoPro pack. In there, just random AKS stuff, you know. My set wear gloves, because you never know what we're going to encounter out there. My little ditty bag that I like to wear on me. I'm taking my little day pack, so that's where my GH5 is going to go, and just battery supplies. Because of COVID, we're not going to be flying, so we're traveling, road tripping in a van to 6 different states, all 6 different states that we have to film in. And also taking my ready rig right here, so I got to break that down because we're doing so much shoulder rig. I want to make sure, and yeah, I'm going to be flying the Canon C500 Mark II on the ready rig, and if you guys know, you follow the channel, you know that I rig it up like an easy rig. And because I didn't want it to be completely dark on the YouTube for the 3 weeks that I'm gone, I decided to give you guys a little sneak peek of what we do on the Patreon. So this is from Patreon number 27, a pre-production process for a Quibi pilot that I was hired to DP on. Of course, we haven't done it yet because of the current state of affairs, but if you're interested in the pre-production process of working with Quibi, because it's a little intense, you almost have to shoot in 6K because they stream 2 different timelines simultaneously to your device. So if you're interested in that, this is a very small excerpt of it. It's not the full video because on Patreon, I do put out a video every Monday morning at 10 a.m. and they're usually an hour long because it's completely unedited. It's always something different. Sometimes it's my own breakdown of jobs that I've shot and been hired to do as DP. Sometimes it's breaking down or giving work feedback on any of the Patreon members' jobs or reels. And sometimes it's tutorials. It's always different stuff, or pre-production like the one you're about to see. So check this out. I hope you enjoy it. If you are already on the DogTimes Patreon, I'm going to be doing something different. It's going to be a free post for when I'm gone, so you won't be charged for them. It's going to be just really quick little BTS videos of the documentary. So that's something that my Patreon people can look forward to as well. Next week on the YouTube, however, I do have one review video in the can already, so you're not going to want to miss that. It's a pretty awesome little kit. And then the following week, I'm going to do another little sneak peek of another previous Patreon video. So if you want to check it out, what's going on with the documentary, I encourage you to either join the DogTimes Patreon so you can check out those BTS videos, or just follow along on Instagram. I'm sure I'm going to be putting a lot on there as well at JP on Film. So now I'm going to leave you with the excerpt from Patreon number 27, the Quibi pre-production process. Changes aspect ratio. So the show, if you don't know anything about Quibi, it's like streaming service for cell phones only. It's got huge production shows on it already. Obviously ours is a low budget, you know, just a pilot pitch for these guys. But I was like, did you know that when you switch the phone, it switches the aspect ratio while you're watching it? And they're like, well, we didn't know that. They're like, they thought you either choose 9:16 or 16:9. They were thinking like, oh, we thought you get to choose what aspect ratio is. I go, no, literally while you're watching the show, you can flip your phone sideways and it'll change to that. And all of a sudden now you're watching in a different aspect ratio. Now you can see more stuff on the sides and not see the top and bottom. But if you flipped it like this, then it would be a different frame. Now the reason why this is so nuts, because that means you have to film both aspect ratios at the same exact time. Now Quibi kind of recommends that you just pick one and then you zoom in and crop in and post for the second one. And to me, I'm like, I don't want to do that. One, because it's like, well, there goes all the integrity of the cinematographer as far as composition and framing goes. And with me, like, I've been told, and I like to believe, that framing and composition is one of my strong suits. If you ask me, it's my only strong suit, right? So I'm like, you can't like shoot me in the knee and take away my one strong suit, you know, take away my framing and composition ideas, and then what? You get my shitty lighting skills. It's like, and so I was kind of like, no, we got to figure this out. So this is off of a 4.5K sensor. So this isn't even a 6K sensor, right? This is just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. So with a 4.5K sensor, this is something you can do when you're talking about combining 16:9 by 9:16. Right? So here you can tell they actually were recording in 4.5K, but then you can tell their frame line as 3094 by 1740, right? So they're actually using a 1.78 by 1 aspect ratio here, right? And then frame line B, the white one, the one going up and down, is a 0.56 by 1 frame line, right? And you can see the aspect ratio of this is a 1742 by 3096 pixels, right? So this isn't even really true to what they're requiring, right? But this just gives you an idea if you had a 4.5K sensor. But we're shooting on a 6K sensor and we're gonna deliver in 4K, right? So to break that down a little bit, let me show you some different options of things that I was finding in my own research of this. So here is the Red 8K. So if you were shooting in 8K, this is one option you could do. The top one here is 16 by 9, and then the one up, and then, so this is a perfect 16 by 9, and also a 9 by 16, combining both those aspect ratios at the same time. But again, this is if you're shooting on an 8K sensor. So if you were doing this on an 8K Red, which this is, you could literally just, you know, the 9 by 16, you're kind of just locked in there. The 16 by 9, you can decide, do you want it to ride at the top, do you want it to ride at the bottom, or do you want it to ride in the middle? Right, so that's one of those things you gotta start thinking about stuff like that. But again, we can't really do that because we're not shooting in 8K either, right? So your options get limited compared to what sensor you're shooting on. So now here is, okay, so here's another example. If you're shooting on a Red 8K, here's an example of where they put the 16 by 9 in the middle rather than at the top, right? So that's another option that you can do. But again, that's on an 8K sensor. So now if we're looking here, and here's another option you can do. This is kind of interesting. If you were shooting on an 8K sensor, you could do something like this, right? So they put the 16 by 9 in the middle of the 9 by 16 without the stretched out part, right? So this is interesting. They've kind of condensed it inside of it, which is really interesting. But again, this is something you can only do if you are shooting on an 8K sensor, right? Okay, so now, now we have something like this. So here's the Red 6K. So here's kind of what we can do with the 6K, which is the 9 by 16 and the 16 by 9 in the middle, right? And again, much like the 8K, we can decide, do we want to push it towards the top or do we want to push it towards the bottom, right? But in terms of doing something like they did with that 8K where they shoved it inside, you really can't do that because you don't have the real estate on your sensor to do something like that. But then there's also this one. This is an option if you had a 4K sensor, right? So you can essentially do it like this as well. Here's the thing though. If you have a 4K sensor, you can only do this if the deliverable is 1080. Because notice how these are 1080 by 1920. So we could never shoot a Quibi show on a 4K camera. You really can't do it because there's no way to do it because you can only do this sensor thing if you're delivering in 1080, whereas they require a 4K deliverable. So you almost have to shoot a show like that on a 6K sensor so you can get both those aspect ratios and have two deliverables as 4K deliverables. So there you guys go, just a very quick sneak peek of what we do on the DogTimes Patreon. If you're interested in more, I encourage you to check it out. Otherwise, next week stay tuned because I do have a pretty awesome gear review in the bag. Hey, if you're a fan of the channel and like the support, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The first and easiest way is to just hit that subscribe button and be sure to hit the bell so you get the latest videos as soon as they're dropped. But if you want to go above and beyond that and be a part of a daily filmmaking conversation, then I invite you to join the DogTimes community over on Patreon. That is where once a week I release an exclusive members-only video breaking down projects, talking gear, and sharing real-world experiences as a DIY indie filmmaker in Los Angeles. But my favorite part about the Patreon is the conversations happening over on Discord. That is where you will be connected with like-minded filmmakers and have instant access to learning ways to improve your own skills so you feel more confident about working on set as a professional. So welcome to the DogTimes community, and I'll chat with you soon.